Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, November the 14th, 2023. Today I want to talk about Hamas, and in particular I want to look at the horoscope of Hamas. So if I want to set up the horoscope, I need to find out what day they came into being. And, I did the usual internet search and came across three possible dates. The first possibility was December the 9th, 1987. This, I think, was suggested by an article in the French newspaper Le Monde. Then Wikipedia goes for December the 10th. There was some meeting, apparently, when it was decided to set it up. But Hamas itself celebrates its anniversary on December the 14th. This comes up again and again if you do searches, for different anniversaries, the 35th anniversary, the 33rd, 32nd, whatever. It's December the 14th, and I think this December the 14th was, when it was kind of formally announced, maybe when some pamphlet was put out. I'm not sure about that, but I think one should really go for the date that Hamas regards as being their beginning, which is December the 14th. December the 9th is, by the way, sorry, that's December the 14th, 1987. These are all early December 1987 dates. Now, December the 9th, the earliest date, that was the beginning of the first Intifada. Intifada apparently is an Arabic word meaning shaking off. The idea is that you shake off, I suppose, the occupiers. And as a result of the Israeli Defense Force there was an accident and involving a vehicle owned by the Israeli Defense Force, and I think 4 Palestinians were killed, and that caused outrage amongst Palestinians, and that was the trigger for the first Intifada. I think that is a valid thing to look at, the Intifada. There was an article in the Jerusalem Post that suggested that the Intifada started at 6 a.m. I'm not convinced about that. I have got a chart for 6 a.m., but I don't know about that. But certainly it's December the 9th. So what I'm going to do in terms of my topic for today, and I'm going to look at the December the 14th horoscope for Hamas. I don't have a time. I'm just going for the date. I'm also going to look at some other charts. I'm going to look at a full moon chart, the full moon prior to the Intifada coming into being, also, which is the same time as Hamas coming into being. And I'm going to try and compare that with the attacks on Israel on October the 7th. I have looked at this theme before, but I hadn't actually looked at specifically at Hamas's chart. So that's what I do want to do today. But before I do that, I want to look at the I Ching and astrology for today, which is Tuesday, November the 14th, 2023. So top right, that is a map of the Gaza Strip. I've got to put something up there, so I didn't have any photographs of people to put up, so Gaza Strip seemed a reasonable thing to show. Okay, so what is happening today on Tuesday? We've had the new moon a few days ago, and one thing that I often say about new moons is that new moons are about new beginnings. But right at the beginning, secrecy is often important. So if we've got plans, we shouldn't talk about them straight away. And I suppose the symbolism is quite clear here. It's like you've got seeds germinating, in the dark earth. You don't want to pull, if you keep pulling them out of the earth to see how it's going, those seeds are probably going to die. You have to leave them in the dark earth to develop. And it's the same with a new moon. Those plans, those ideas have to germinate, and they need to be left alone, and you certainly shouldn't be shouting about them. But the new moon is starting to break up. That intense secret phase of a new moon is coming to an end. The moon, when by definition, when you've got a new moon, the sun and the moon are together in the same sign, obviously. But the moon is now in Sagittarius. So that intensity is starting to fade. So if we have got brand new ideas that we've been developing over the last 24 hours, maybe now's the time to start perhaps getting them out into the open, discussing them a bit. Still, we shouldn't be shouting about them, but just getting some feedback perhaps. That might be a good idea, particularly with the moon in Sagittarius, conjunct Mercury. Moon, Mercury in Sagittarius, that is about communication. Moon and Mercury are the two planets of communication. Moon is more about emotional communication. Mercury is more about sort of mental, intellectual communication. So when they come together, we are able to communicate extremely well, though I suppose I should point out that Mercury is in its detriment in Sagittarius. We do have to be a bit careful what we say. Mercury in Sagittarius can shoot its mouth off. So don't say everything. I've talked about the secrets of the new moon. Don't spill everything. You don't have to say everything. So if you've got a plan, you can talk about the things that need to be talked about, but maybe there are parts of that plan which need to be kept. Which need to be kept secret. So you talk about things, on a need to know basis. Now, I should say, as far as when the moon goes into Sagittarius, London time, by the way, it goes in at 2:23 a.m. So that means that if you're in the Americas, the moon is in Sagittarius before the day even starts. So moon is in Sagittarius all day long. If you're in London, it's pretty much there pretty much there the whole day, unless you're around at 2 in the morning. And 2 in the morning in London, moon will still be in Scorpio. That is true. So if you're in the Americas, Western Europe, moon is in Sagittarius all day long. If you're say in India, it'll sort of be after dawn that the moon goes into Sagittarius. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, it might not be sort of till lunchtime, early afternoon that you get the feel of the moon in Sagittarius. Now, what is good about the moon being in Sagittarius is that it's not just conjunct Mercury. It's also sextile Venus. I've already talked about the fact that Mercury and Venus are in close sextile. I mean, the sextile between Mercury and Venus becomes exact tomorrow, but it's pretty exact now. Mercury and Venus is a very talented combination, whether it's, art, business, communication, it just works. And so with a moon conjunct Mercury, sextile Venus, this really is a great time for interacting with other people, getting our message across, and really telling everyone how wonderfully talented we are. We don't have to boast. We don't have to make a big thing about it. It's just about, just in a spontaneous way, showing the world what we can do. Perhaps, if we're an artist, now might be a time to, unveil our work, show someone what we've created. Even if we're not a professional artist, there are things we create. so plans and everything. Our creations should be available. We should be telling people about what we're doing, because I think in many cases they are going to be interested. Now, while all this is going on, Venus at 6 Libra is making an 144-degree aspect to Saturn, a biquintile. So a biquintile is 144 degrees. You might think, oh, so what? 144 degrees, some random number of degrees. Well, if you imagine a cake cut into 5 parts, 144 degrees would be 2 of the 5 slices, assuming all the slices are equal. And when you've got biquintiles, quintiles, you should think in terms of style. The number 5 is seen as a man-made aspect. That's what style is about. It's creating links that perhaps aren't naturally there. So with Venus biquintile Saturn, we get a rather different picture to the moon conjunct Mercury in Sagittarius. Venus biquintile Saturn is a style that is quite reserved. We are going to want to give the impression, some of us are going to want to give the impression that we're sort of rather aloof, particularly in terms of relationships and emotionality. So if we're dealing with a heavily emotional situation, or relationships, romance, that kind of stuff, some of us are going to want to some of us are going to want to give the impression that we're not bothered, but we're able to control our feelings. So if you see people being really cool, not being ostentatious about, not being over the top about their feelings, it could just be an act. It doesn't mean that that's what someone really feels. But I think in many cases there is a coolness, but it's not a big deal. I don't think it's a problem. It's all about the kind of style that people want to adopt. Okay, so that's the overall picture astrologically. I think today astrologically is actually quite good, and this is reflected in my forecasts for the 12 signs. So here are my forecasts for today for the 12 signs for Tuesday, November the 14th, 2023. Aries, we're starting to see some action. Things that used to be blocked are starting to move, and you're feeling that you have a lot more freedom. You can express yourself how you want and also reach out towards new possibilities and new ventures. But try not to commit yourself to things because plans could be changed at short notice. Taurus, the pressure is starting to ease and the people around you are going to be more reasonable. But that doesn't mean that you can completely relax. There are still some issues to deal with. And with a moon aspecting Venus, you'll know how to get everyone onto your side. You show some talent, but you're also ready to listen. Do someone a favour, and they won't forget it. Gemini, you have to join the flow of humanity. There are people to interact with, and you can't just say that you've got something else to do. And it may be that you need to be challenged by different views and different experiences. But emotionally, you don't have to give anything away. And all that's really required on your part is some engagement and a bit of your time. Cancer, there's no reason why it can't be a good day. Just take it easy and stick to a schedule, because when everything is plotted out, there's less aggravation and actually less work. And with the moon making a conjunction to Mercury and a sextile to Venus, your people skills will be excellent and You won't have to make a fuss to get attention. Leo, you're feeling in better shape thanks to the moon moving into Leo-friendly Sagittarius. There's more room to express yourself, and you'll find new ways to have fun. And be mindful of what you're really good at, and don't be modest about it. Once you show the world what you can do, even if you have to shout about it, there'll be no stopping you. Virgo, you can be yourself in your own space. You won't feel isolated. Instead, you'll feel secure, at the center of everything. And it's almost like you can be a node, a point where messages move to, from, and across. This makes you important. And when you're in control, you can take steps to enhance your financial prospects. Libra. Things are looking good for Librans. The moon is now out of Scorpio and is making a fortunate aspect to Venus, your ruling planet. Material worries will dissipate and you can start focusing on the real you, getting your personality out into the open and being able to tell everyone who you are and what you want. Scorpio, you can afford to expand your horizons and move into new areas because the point of intensity is now breaking up and you no longer have to concentrate on just one thing. And perhaps you should be thinking about new ways of enriching yourself. But don't underestimate the people close to you. Someone out there is very clever and they can certainly be useful. Sagittarius, the moon is moving into your star sign, where it makes a conjunction to Mercury. You're the one getting attention and you're attracting people into your sphere of influence. Maybe it's your sparkling personality that is drawing everyone in, and it's a good time to get closer to your friends. And one friend in particular may be especially important. Capricorn, you don't want to involve yourself too closely in the world and its distractions. You're not in the mood and it all seems a waste of time. But with the moon aspecting Venus, there are things you can be doing which involve both your career and other people. Your opinions are valued and your actions appreciated. But you don't really have to make a great effort to advertise yourself. Aquarius, there's room for optimism. You feel that your vision of the future is achievable, that your hopes and wishes wouldn't exist if there wasn't some chance of them being realized. Your situation is helped by your social environment. There are people out there who share your vision, who are ready to cooperate with you. Pisces, if you're working today, then things are looking good. There's a constructive atmosphere and you'll have a chance to express your views about the way things should be run. You might be concerned that you'll go too far, but at the moment you have your finger on the pulse and you're unlikely to make errors of judgment. So I'm now going to move to the I Ching. And as always, I asked a question. The question being, what is today, Tuesday, going to be like for people watching this video? And I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times. And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 63, after completion. This hexagram indicates that the job has been done. You have the image here of crossing a river, and crossing a river is a very dangerous task. You can get wet, you can fall in, you can freeze, you can drown, whatever, but it's done. You have completed it. So maybe congratulations, but with completion, after completion, now that kind of starts a new cycle. So what are you going to do now? And it might feel that right now, having crossed the river, everything is fine. Everything is in good order. But actually, once you've crossed the river and you're starting to think about what the next thing you should be doing is, this is actually a point of vulnerability. What now? It seems great. And we've got a moving line. This fourth line is moving. If you look at the structure of this hexagram, you have got the bottom three lines sort of represent something bright, something shining, and the top line represents the abyss. It represents water. So the fourth line is indicating a movement from the shining, from the bright, into the water, into the abyss. We're on that border. And it's a situation where we think we've completed everything. Everything is fine. But we just see that first sign. We see a little thing going on. We hardly notice it, but it's a sign. It's a sign that things are not actually as good as they should be. It's a sign that decay is imminent. Not imminent, but decay is. It's that first sign that things are going wrong. It's that sign that no one else can see, that we see. We just know, and we have a bad feeling about it, and then we forget about it, and everything's fine, but we've seen it. And so if we're wise, we need to be aware of that. However good things may be, however content people are with the new situation, something's wrong. This situation, there's a problem. It needs to be dealt with, but maybe it is about the natural cycle of growth and decay. Nothing lasts forever. So that's something to be aware of. So the question is, what happens if you move the situation forward, when you start to be in a situation that, it really is decaying? What do you do then? And that takes us to the second hexagram, which is hexagram 49, which is revolution. It's the kind of revolution that is necessary. If we see that things are not right, if we see those first signs of decay, what do? We have to change. We have to change ourselves. We perhaps need our own sort of personal revolution. And it's something that just has to happen. But it may also be that parts of our world have to have a revolution. I mean, for example, at work, there may be people telling us what to do, and people in positions of authority who really don't know what they're doing. And maybe those in authority need to be, okay, I won't say overthrown, that's a bit dramatic, but you need a change in the order. The change in the hierarchy needs to change, because there are some people who don't really know what they're talking about, who are causing harm. And so we have to work out how best to deal with it. But, I suppose revolutions, like charity, they begin at home, don't they? I mean, we've got to work on ourselves first. We've got to create that inner revolution in order to deal with the challenges of the future, because we already know that decay is just around the corner. Maybe this just relates to the economy. It's very easy to think that everything's fine in the economy. That's what politicians tell us. But perhaps we know that things are not right. So we have to make changes in ourselves, and perhaps the way we do business and the way we handle our finances, that kind of thing, in order to be ready for when things get really bad. I mean, if they get really bad, I don't know. That's one possibility. I'm not saying things are going to get really bad, but that's just something we need to consider. Okay, so that's the I Ching, and I now want to go back to the astrology, and I want to look at Hamas and related charts. Okay, so the first chart, very quickly, is a chart of the Intifada. Now, there's a 6 a.m. chart. I've given it a 6 a.m. Time. I don't know whether it's 6 a.m. I read this old article in the Jerusalem online. The Jerusalem Post was saying it started in 6 a.m. I don't know whether this is right. So this is the beginning of it all, and this is December the 9th, and by December the 14th is a date that Hamas choose to celebrate their anniversary. So almost perhaps a chart of the Intifada it's almost a chart of Hamas, and the aspect that was perhaps dominating this period was the Mars-Pluto conjunction. There was a Mars-Pluto conjunction on December the 9th. There was a Mars-Pluto conjunction on December the 14th. Mars is about aggression, and Mars-Pluto is intense aggression in Scorpio. Mars is strong in Scorpio. If you're trying to start a rebellion, intifada, whatever, it's good to have Mars in Scorpio, particularly if it's conjunct Pluto. But it's in a fixed sign. Things in a fixed sign can go on for a long time, and they can be very emotional, a lot of hatred, a lot of resentment. One of the reasons I think the Intifada took place was because frustration that Israel had taken over the sort of West Bank and Gaza Strip after the 1967 war, and things hadn't changed, and so suddenly something boiled over. So that's the Mars-Pluto conjunction, which I think really sort of dominates things. Plus, it's Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius, I think it is important to think that this Intifada started with the Sun in Sagittarius. With, in fact, a lot of stuff in Sagittarius: Mercury in Sagittarius, Sun in Sagittarius, Saturn in Sagittarius, and trine Jupiter. These are big ambitions. This is not just restricted to ideas about what happens in Gaza or what happens in the West Bank, which leads to the chart of Hamas. Now, if you tell me that Hamas is not born on December the 14th and it's born on December the 10th, well, not a lot of things stay the same. I'm pretty sure it's December the 14th, simply because I believe this is a day that Hamas regard as their anniversary. So yes, we have these 4 planets up there in Sagittarius, trine Jupiter. So when you see these planets in Sagittarius, Sagittarius is about not having any bounds. It's going beyond where it is, and I'm sort of reminded of this phrase that we've been hearing again and again and again over the last month, whatever, this Palestinian phrase, from the river to the sea, which is so controversial. And if I understand it correctly, this is from a river to the sea, represents Hamas's ambitions, what their their mission statement, if you like, from a river to the sea. The river Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, and yeah, they want to take over Israel. They don't want Israel to exist anymore. That's very Sagittarian. That Hamas want it all. They want Sagittarius. There's no bounds to where they want to go. You think of Hamas firing all these rockets into Israel. I mean, that is completely Sagittarian. Rockets, fireworks, big bangs. That's and again, having no limits. This small little enclave, this strip of land. Yet they are planning to take over Israel, to reclaim it all from a river to the sea, and that's really very Sagittarian. But then you've got Mars conjunct Pluto, which is not at all Sagittarian, particularly in Scorpio. That represents, the intensity of the violence that Hamas is capable of doing, and there is a minor aspect in here which I think one needs to look at, and it represents Mars and Saturn. You can see that Mars is at 13 degrees 18. Saturn is at 23-24 Sagittarius. So you can see that Mars and Saturn are 40 degrees apart. So 40 degrees is 1/9 of the circle. And sort of, if I remember, when I was doing a harmonics course at the Faculty of Astrological Studies decades ago. I was in the 80s. That was even before the first Intifada. The number 9 it's quite a spiritual number. It's how you want to. If I remember rightly, it was about how you want to transcend. So if two planets are 1/9 of a circle apart, which is the same as saying it's conjunct on the 9th harmonic, it's about Mars Saturn. It's a death pair. Transcending through death. That's what it means. That 40-degree aspect between Mars and Saturn. And maybe that sums up a lot of, that does describe Hamas to a great extent. So those are a few things about the chart. Oh, one other thing. I know that I'm quite skeptical about Chiron, but I have to point out that Uranus, at the time, the time of the First Intifada, the time of the beginning of Hamas, Uranus was exactly opposition Chiron. So how would I see that? Well, you might see it like this, that Chiron is the wound. I suppose if you're Palestinian, I'm not expressing any opinions here. If you're Palestinian, you would regard the wound as losing your country, I suppose. You lost a lot of your country in the 1948 war against Israel, the Arab-Israeli war, and then in the 1967 war, you've lost even more of it, and the West Bank, Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip was Egyptian, wasn't it? So that is a wound. I suppose, losing your country, although Chiron is not in Cancer, it's in Gemini. And it's opposition Uranus. So you could say that the Intifada and Hamas is about attempting to heal the wound through insurrection and revolution, or intifada, which is, of course, shaking off Israel. Of course, not just shaking off Israel from Gaza, but if you take from the river to the sea, it would be shaking off Israel, removing Israel from the whole of Palestine, or what you would regard as being Palestine. So I think that Uranus Chiron opposition, really is important. Now that we've got the Hamas chart, it might be a good idea to look at its solar arc directions. So these would be the solar arc directions for its attack on Israel on October the 7th this year. So here you've got the Hamas chart in the inner wheel, and on the outer wheel you've got the chart for the attack, which was well, not the chart for the attack, the solar arc directions for the attack. So this would be 13 and 20, 13, 23, what is that, 36 years later or whatever. So you move everything a degree for a year, and so this represents sort of what was going on at the time of the attack. Solar arc, there's Neptune. At Neptune, Hamas's Neptune is at 7 Capricorn. So you direct, if you direct Neptune through until October the 7th, 2023, it directs to 1337 Aquarius. So that means solar arc directed Neptune is square Hamas's natal Mars. Okay, you could say Neptune is about things which are underhand, which are sort of secretive. So this sort of secretive attack on Israel, that might be one way of interpreting it. But Neptune, I'm thinking that this attack on Israel wasn't properly thought through with Neptune. Neptune, I don't think they'd really seen it through. I don't think they'd really thought it through. And, it depends who you look at. And sort of if you look at, a lot of sources, a lot of places on the internet are saying how Israel is losing this war against Hamas. Others are saying Israel is winning. I don't know. It depends who you look at. It's kind of like the Ukraine, isn't it? I mean, depends who you want to look at. But, this Neptune square Mars suggests that maybe this was just not the right thing for Hamas to be doing. That is a possibility. And this Mars, particularly as Mars, one other aspect that Hamas has is that this Mars at 1318 Scorpio is 135 degrees from the North Node. So in other words, so it's a sesquiquadrate between Mars and the North Node. So Neptune is Neptune here is making a square to Mars, and it's also making a 45-degree aspect to the node. The node might be networking, but it might also, I suppose, be the direction forward. And I think there's a suggestion here simply from a point of view of solar arc directions that Hamas haven't really thought this through, and there's a certain confusion about what their aims were, and maybe their idealism and their sort of Sagittarius view from a river to the sea and all of that has maybe clouded their judgment. So those are the solar arc directions. Then we have transits. I mean, there's one transit that I really want to look at, which is, so there's Hamas again. Hamas's chart in the middle, and this is the chart for the attack on October the 7th, and it's Jupiter that I find interesting, because Jupiter is at 1352 Taurus, opposition Mars. That's kind of obvious, isn't it? This is the attack in a massive way, in a massive Jupiterian, over-the-top kind of way. But it is an opposition. There was a challenge to do it. It had to be done, and it was done in an over-the-top way. Also, you've got look at Mars. Mars at the time of the attack was at 2637 Libra, so it was sextile. Hamas's Uranus, and it's not shown on this chart, but that means by definition it was trine the Chiron. So I suppose Mars hitting that Uranus-Chiron opposition by fortunate aspects, by sextiles, trines, it just became so easy to do this thing, to somehow drastic action, revolution to heal the wound, and Mars is the attack. Incidentally, the Sun at 1337 Libra at the time of the attack was semi-sextile Mars in Scorpio, Hamas's Mars in Scorpio. Again, semi-sextiles are not fortunate aspects, so I think Sun semi-sextile Mars, I don't know, there's something about this attack that on October the 7th that I don't think was a particularly good thing to do. I mean, that's aside from the morality of the thing. I think that Hamas may have made a mistake, but it's very difficult to see when you look at the media. Everyone is saying it's Israel's messed up. At least a lot of the stuff I've seen, Israel's messed up. They've made a mistake. Hamas is going to gain from this, whatever. I'm absolutely not convinced. I'm not convinced about that. Now, one thing I have noticed, and kind of what I wanted to finish with, is the full moon taking place just before the Intifada. So the full moon taking place, no, that's a full moon, right. So there was a full moon on December the 5th, 1987. So that would have been about sort of 4 days before the Intifada, and I make it at 10:01 a.m. and I set this for Gaza. Now, there are a couple of things about this full moon. First thing is that Uranus is just over a degree from the ascendant midheaven midpoint. You see, there's the ascendant at the time of the full moon, 3 Aquarius. Midheaven was at 2045 Scorpio. So the midpoint is around where Uranus is. So Uranus is on the midpoint of the ascendant and the midheaven. The ascendant and the midheaven together, I think it's just been described as the time and the place. And so this is Uranus. It's not absolutely exact. It's just over a degree. I think it's 1 degree and 6 minutes off the conjunction of the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint. But I think that's good enough. The ascendant the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint is important. And with Uranus on the time and the place, that's the revolution. That is the Intifada. And you've also got, of course, Chiron there as well, opposition, the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint. So that sort of personalizes a new moon, because, sorry, the full moon. I mean, the full moon is everywhere on Earth experiences a full moon. So why is it going to be special for the Gaza Strip? Well, it's going to be special from the Gaza Strip because this is a place where Uranus is on the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint. I mean, there will be an arc of places on Earth where this will be the case, but that is important. And Uranus is semi-square Pluto. Uranus is exactly 45 degrees from Pluto. So Pluto is aspecting the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint. So you have got Uranus and Pluto aspecting the ascendant, midheaven, midpoint, and that lines up the Intifada very well. But there's something more interesting about this lunation, which kind of links to where we are now. If you look at this lunation set for Gaza, the midheaven is 20 degrees 45 minutes Scorpio. You got that? 20 degrees 45 minutes Scorpio. So remember that, 20 degrees 45 minutes Scorpio. Now let's look at yesterday's new moon. Yesterday's new moon on November the 13th was at 20 degrees 44 Scorpio. So got it? That is 2045, 2044. So this new moon, it was exactly on the midheaven of the full moon, just before the Intifada, just before the inception of Hamas. You can see that this, as I've said on several occasions, this new moon yesterday was exactly opposition Uranus, and set for Gaza, the new moon yesterday, on November the 13th, the new moon set for Gaza was exactly on the midheaven. So Uranus was exactly on the IC. And I think the fact that this links to the First Intifada, it links to the creation of Hamas. So this makes me think that this new moon yesterday is going to, I think it is going to put this conflict onto a level we weren't really expecting. I think this really is... I think it is really big. I think this is not just some sort of trivial thing that's just going to fade away, because that's what people always think. People always think when you get this kind of thing, well, yeah, it will die down, even if Iran is claiming this and that and whatever. But most people want a quiet life. But I don't think this thing is just going to die down. And I think the power of yesterday's new moon, with the new moon exactly on the midheaven, really does underline this. Okay, so that's my thoughts on Hamas and what's going on at the moment. I do understand that some of the dates I've given for Hamas, there have been alternative dates, but nonetheless, whether Hamas came into being on the 9th, the 10th, the 14th, the main features of the chart still remain the same. You've got Uranus opposition Chiron. You have got loads of planets in Sagittarius. And most importantly, you've got a Mars-Pluto conjunction. But, I think the 14th is a day to go for, because that's when Hamas celebrate the anniversary. So, yeah, I think it looks as if Hamas came into being on the 14th of December, 1987. Okay, well, thank you for listening. Hope you found that interesting. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.